Hello there, lovely people. It's Alex from Nintendo Live here, and today we're reviewing for you Axiom Verge 2 on the Nintendo Switch. This review was originally written by the stupendous Mitch Vogel and has been adapted for video by me. But anyway, that's more than enough waffling. Let's dive right into things. In the comparatively dark days of the Wii U, we often had to focus more on indie games to get us through the worst of the months-long droughts between major first-party releases. Fortunately, various smaller studios stepped up, and one such gem was Axiom Verge, an absolutely incredible Metroidvania that was produced in its entirety by just one remarkably talented man. Axiom Verge would have been just fine as a standalone release, but evidently Thomas Happ had ideas left over that he felt the need to produce a fully-fledged follow-up with Axiom Verge 2. A game which feels distinct from its predecessor in some key ways, while the core gameplay feels just as polished as it's ever been, making for an impressively high-quality experience from stem to stern. Unlike the first game, which saw you playing as a scientist named Trace, the narrative of Axiom Verge 2 follows Indra Chaudhary, a billionaire CEO of a major international conglomerate. There are some real At the Mountains of Madness vibes as Indra finds herself taking a chopper to a remote Antarctic research station owned by her company after receiving a mysterious message that hints that her missing daughter might just be there. But you can guess how it's gonna go. Unfortunately, all the staff at the base seem to have vanished without a trace. Trace. And things are made even worse when Indra accidentally falls into a cave and drowns. When she comes to, Indra finds herself that she's been transported to a different dimension and given a quote-unquote new body by a mysterious artificial being. If there's one thing that the narrative absolutely excels at, it's keeping the player continuously wondering what the bleeding hell is going on. You're given just enough information that the narrative makes sense, and the gaps are slowly filled in as you find optional text logs along the way, but there's rarely a moment where you feel like you truly understand all the forces at play. You're not sure if Indra is dreaming, dead, or something else entirely, which gives all the proceedings a wonderfully vague fever dream aesthetic. And without spoiling too much, this release does eventually reveal its fascinating connections to the original Axiom Verge, so worry ye not. This time around, gameplay has been mixed up a little bit from the original, which is good if you like change. Axiom Verge 2 is still a 2D Metroidvania, but combat is now orientated mostly around an ice pick that Indra finds almost immediately. This requires you to get up close and personal with all the enemies you face on this adventure, and whilst you do have a ranged option in the form of a boomerang you get later on, combat has an unmistakably different flow. It's not necessarily better or worse than what came before, and it's later expanded upon as you find more secrets in the overworld, but it does feel like this may be more of a divisive aspect to the new release. Luckily, new gameplay ideas still keep both exploration and combat feeling fresh as the experience goes on. For example, you're given an ability early on that lets you hack any machinery in your immediate vicinity. Not only does this give you the option to overcome a variety of obstacles that once stood in your way, but it also lets you take over most of the enemies you encounter. Through spending consumable points, you can do things like making your foes fight for you, or causing them to explode or give out health drops. It's the slow drip of mechanics like this which fundamentally change the way you look at Axiom Verge 2, making it the sort of game that becomes intensely more enjoyable the longer it goes on. The creepy, alien hallways of the original release have been traded here for much more naturalistic, open-air environments, but the map feels like it's overall more cohesively designed. Though you're given a marker that shows you on the map where to next advance the story, it almost feels like you can go in just about any direction and make meaningful progress. Important upgrades and tools are scattered everywhere in Axiom Verge 2, which lends it to a beautifully non-linear feeling that doesn't strictly pigeonhole you into sticking to a somewhat linear path. A big part of this non-linearity is due to the new breach mechanic introduced relatively early on. You're given access to a little spider drone that can access portals dotted around the map, and stepping through one of these takes the drone to an alternate plane of existence that parallels the one that Indra is in and remains in. Some of the more elaborate puzzles require you to smartly utilize the pathways in one world world to find new ones in the next, which makes the already massive world feel that much more labyrinthine and fascinating. Alongside the more notable upgrades, most regions contain a number of smaller collectibles that feed into a new skill point system. This introduces an RPG-light aspect to the gameplay loop, as you can choose how you want to build the abilities of Indra and indeed her robot companion. Things like health, attack speed, and hacking levels can be upgraded with skill points to be more useful, and whilst it seems like a bit of a strange inclusion at first, the new skill system makes much more sense in practice. Now, a collectible can theoretically be whatever you want it to be, rather than leaving you possibly disappointed with finding it another health upgrade or attack boost that you really don't need. Those of you looking for replayability will be pleased to know that Axiom Verge 2 lands perfectly in that sweet spot where it feels neither too long nor too short. It should take you around 15 hours to see the narrative through to its conclusion, and you can expect to add another 10 to that if you want to go for full completion. We may sound like a broken record at this point, but we really can't emphasize enough that this journey is exceptionally tight in its overall design, ensuring that those 15 hours positively fly by once the ball really gets rolling. Plus, those of you who can't get enough have the speedrun option to look into, which enables you to rush through the game in one go without having to deal with any cutscenes, pauses, or any randomized content. It may not be infinitely replayable, but there's something to be said about a game like this which delivers a focused and consistently excellent experience across a modest runtime. There's no wasted time or unnecessary content here. Axiom Verge 2 is all Velocitator and no Deceleratrix. Whilst the original release was borderline horror with its dark visuals and unsettling music, Axiom Verge 2 feels much more disarmingly inviting. Though you'll spend much of your time exploring cold, wild environments and caves, there's a much broader palette of bright colors employed here. Though it feels like a break from the disturbingly isolating atmosphere that came before it, which we loved, we came to really appreciate the more varied design of the environments. Plus, there's still plenty of weird stuff to behold, and all of it is backed up by a suitably sci-fi soundtrack that keeps you on your toes. Axiom Verge is a remarkably tough act to follow, but Thomas Happ has done it again in producing a pitch-perfect, excellently paced Metroidvania adventure. Axiom Verge 2 perfectly balances familiar elements that made the original great, and trying out new ideas that give the sequel its own identity. And whilst lovers of the first game may take some time to adjust, everything comes together and makes for a potent experience that no fan of the genre will want to miss out on. The mysterious atmosphere, thrilling pace, and fantastic world design all come together to make for a worthy follow-up that stands well on its own. Do yourself a favor and pick up Axiom Verge 2 as soon as you can. This is a game that's absolutely worth your time. You've reached the end of the review, and that means it's time for Alex's personal thoughts. It feels like a while since I've done one of these, although I don't think it is. I love the original Axiom Verge. I had it on the Wii U, I had it on Switch and everything. I even considered buying the collector's physical edition, and then I remembered I'm not made of money, so I didn't. But my love for the game is still extremely strong, and this game, when I first got into it, I was a little bit like, yeah, this isn't quite the Axiom Verge I remember. But as I went on, it became clear that it is trying to do something different, and it succeeds in spades in what it's trying to do. It is really excellent. One thing that I think can't be overstated is the presentation. The music is in some ways wildly different. I mean, it plays with a lot of vocals, not like lyrics or anything, but vocalizations and things like that, and they are beautiful, honestly. They are haunting at times, but most of the time genuinely weirdly relaxing. And the setting, much less like sort of an alien world and much more like a sort of almost like a parallel history. A lot of the carvings and things you'll see around are really they really remind me of like Mesopotamian artwork, and it's just so fitting. In a way, I can't necessarily see it working as well in the original Axiom Verge, but the fact that they go full on with it in this one, and alongside the music as well, it fits so well. If I have one complaint, it's that I didn't realize early enough that there wasn't like a really fairly strict linearity to it. I was looking for the right way to go, not realizing that there was a waypoint on the map or anything, and so I sort of felt like I was repeating areas a lot, and then it suddenly clicked and I realized, hang on, I can go back this way, and oh look, there's an entirely new area that I didn't know I could go into before, and that was when it kind of like blew everything open for me, and it became a much grander experience. I can't recommend it enough. It's absolutely fantastic. If you look at this, you've played Metroidvanias and you go, ho ho, they're my kind of thing. Get it.